Detective Harris had never seen anything like it. Across town, Martha, a retired librarian, stumbled upon a man running through flower beds, covered head to toe in garden gnomes. Meanwhile, locksmith Victor disappeared into thin air, leaving only a notebook full of impossible inventions. These weren't ordinary nights for the police. They were encounters with the bizarre, the unpredictable, and the utterly strange. It was a quiet night in the suburban town of Crestwood, the kind of place where nothing out of the ordinary ever seemed to happen. Streetlights cast a soft glow over neatly trimmed lawns, and the occasional bark of a dog punctuated the stillness. That calm was shattered when neighbors reported strange noises coming from a locksmith's shop at the edge of town. Officers arrived to find the front door ajar, the warm light from inside spilling onto the sidewalk. The scene seemed ordinary at first, but as they stepped inside, unease crept in. Tools were scattered across the floor, drawers left open, and half-finished locks lay in disarray, as if someone had been interrupted mid-task. There was no sign of the locksmith himself. Officers began searching the shop methodically. Every corner was inspected, every shelf examined, and yet there was no trace of the man. There was no back door, no hidden passage, nothing to suggest he had left normally. The air inside was heavy, almost as if it had absorbed the tension of some unseen struggle. In one corner, a small back room drew their attention. The door was slightly open, and a faint outline of a desk could be seen through the gap. Cameras later revealed something more perplexing. Footage from the shop's CCTV showed the locksmith entering the room and then vanishing as if he had been swallowed by thin air. There was no secret exit, no trap door, no manipulation of the camera angles, just him entering the room and disappearing. Investigators scoured the back room and discovered a notebook on the desk. Its pages were filled with sketches of locks unlike anything the officers had ever seen. Some resembled impossible mechanisms, twisting and overlapping in ways that defied logic. Others looked almost like they belonged in a science fiction novel, with abstract symbols and measurements scribbled beside them. The notebook offered no explanation for the locksmith's disappearance, but it hinted at an obsession, a mind consumed by a world of puzzles and hidden mechanisms. Days turned into weeks, and the locksmith remained missing. Friends and family described him as brilliant but eccentric, someone who often worked late into the night and had a fascination with mechanical mysteries. Neighbors who had lived near the shop for years began to whisper about strange lights and faint sounds, though no one could explain what they had witnessed. Police interviews revealed that he had recently mentioned working on a breakthrough lock, something that would be unlike any device the world had seen before, though he had been vague about the details. As investigators pieced together the timeline, a chilling thought emerged. Could the locksmith have built something that allowed him to disappear entirely? Skeptical officers dismissed it at first, but the more they studied the sketches and the mysterious vanishing act on CCTV, the harder it became to ignore. Local media picked up the story, dubbing it the case of the vanishing locksmith. And soon curious onlookers gathered outside the shop, hoping to catch a glimpse of anything unusual. The locksmith was never found, and the notebook remained behind, a silent testament to his brilliance and eccentricity. It became clear that the truth of his disappearance might never be known. The case lingered in the minds of those who investigated it, a haunting reminder that sometimes reality could be stranger than fiction, and that even the most ordinary of towns could hide secrets that defied explanation. The park in the small town of Elmwood had always been a quiet, unremarkable place, a stretch of green where children played during the day and joggers passed through in the mornings. That all changed one night when police were called after a series of strange reports. Witnesses described a man running through the flower beds, moving with an almost frantic energy, but it wasn't his behavior alone that caught their attention. What made it extraordinary was what he was wearing. Garden gnomes, dozens of them, were strapped to his body in layers. Some were perched on his shoulders, others balanced on his arms, and a few teetered on his head. The sight was bizarre enough that several neighbors assumed it was some elaborate prank, But as officers arrived, it became clear the man was entirely serious. The police approached carefully, but he did not resist. Instead, he continued moving through the park, seemingly oblivious to the attention he was drawing. When officers finally managed to lead him away, they discovered the peculiar notes he had left scattered along the pathways. Each letter was handwritten, its words carefully formed but filled with fantastical claims. The letters described a secret vegetable kingdom and suggested that the gnomes he wore were spies sent from this hidden world. According to the man, he was their protector, tasked with ensuring the safety of the kingdom's secrets from unknown intruders. The combination of his costume and the letters created a surreal scene that left the officers both confused and uneasy. At the station, officers attempted to piece together who he was and why he had chosen such an unusual method of expression. Background checks revealed a man who had lived quietly in the town for years, someone who had shown no previous signs of criminal activity. Friends and acquaintances described him as eccentric, someone who spent long hours tending to his garden and collecting unusual figurines. Still, nothing in his past explained the elaborate performance in the park. The letters, when examined closely, revealed a careful imagination. He wrote with precision and logic, as if constructing an entire alternate reality in which he was a crucial player. The authorities concluded that he was harmless, though his actions were undeniably disruptive. Over time, the park became a point of curiosity. People began visiting during the day, hoping to catch a glimpse of the man or to find traces of his letters among the flowers. Local media ran stories, and soon the tale of the gnome guardian circulated online, attracting attention from outside the town. Some speculated about his mental state, while others saw the act as an elaborate piece of performance art. Police reports noted that despite the unusual nature of the case, no crimes had been committed. The man had not harmed anyone or damaged property, and his eccentricity remained within the bounds of harmless fantasy. Even after the police ceased their involvement, the memory of that night lingered in the town's collective consciousness. The image of a man draped in gnomes running through flower beds became emblematic of the strange and unpredictable moments that can arise in everyday life. The letters he left behind remained a curious artifact, a window into a mind that saw the world in layers of imagination invisible to most. For the officers who responded that night, it was a reminder that law enforcement often intersects with the unusual and the extraordinary, and that sometimes the cases that linger longest in memory are not those of danger, but of sheer oddity. In the town of Maple Ridge, residents had grown accustomed to small incidents, a broken window here, a missing bicycle there, but over several months, a pattern began to emerge that puzzled the local police. A burglar had been operating in the area, slipping into homes under the cover of darkness, taking items of value and disappearing without leaving any fingerprints or obvious clues behind. Officers investigated diligently, but the thief seemed always to be one step ahead, vanishing before they could arrive. There was no violence, no forced entry, just an eerie sense that someone was observing the town with uncanny precision. Then, one morning, the situation took a strange turn. Residents awoke to find their stolen belongings returned in small, carefully wrapped packages. Jewelry, electronics, and personal items had been placed back on doorsteps, accompanied by neatly folded notes. Each note was written in a simple, almost playful style, stating that the thief hoped the recipient would find some joy in recovering the item. At first, the police were skeptical, suspecting a prank or a clever attempt to cover tracks. Yet, as more packages appeared, it became clear that this was the same individual responsible for the previous thefts. Curiosity turned into a peculiar kind of investigation. Police traced the origins of the packages, following the trail to a tiny, abandoned cabin on the outskirts of town. The structure was unremarkable from the outside, almost invisible among the surrounding trees. But inside, it was an extraordinary scene. The cabin had been transformed into a meticulous museum of stolen items. Shelves and tables were stacked with valuables, each object polished and arranged with obsessive care. The burglar had created a personal archive, almost as if curating a gallery of crime. The notes left with the packages were equally intriguing. They didn't just return the stolen property, they contained hints, cryptic clues pointing toward other homes that had been or would be targeted. For the police, this introduced a new layer of challenge. They were no longer just trying to catch a thief. They were navigating a carefully constructed game. The burglar seemed to revel in outsmarting the authorities, leaving a trail that was both generous and teasing. Officers spent hours analyzing the notes and packages, attempting to predict where the next theft might occur. Each return of stolen property became a moment of suspense, a puzzle that had to be solved before the next move. Residents began to watch their streets with equal attention, half amused, half anxious about what the thief might do next. Despite the unusual approach, the burglar remained elusive. Weeks turned into months, and police continued to study the patterns. They noted the precision with which the thief had executed each burglary, and the careful thought behind returning each item. It became apparent that this was not a reckless criminal, but someone with a deep fascination for order, control, and perhaps a sense of mischief. The case took on an almost surreal quality, blending crime with clever theatrics. Maple Ridge had never seen anything quite like it, and officers admitted that the experience left them both frustrated and strangely entertained. The burglar's scavenger hunt approach to crime remained unmatched, a constant reminder that sometimes the most unusual challenges in law enforcement come not from danger, but from the unexpected ways human creativity can intersect with crime. Highway 47 had always been a routine stretch of road, familiar to the residents of Silverwood and frequented by commuters passing between towns. Officers on patrol were accustomed to the usual incidents: fender benders, reckless drivers, occasional reports of speeding, but over the course of a few nights, something unusual began to occur. Multiple drivers reported encountering an invisible obstacle that seemed to appear suddenly in the middle of the lane. Each account described a shadowy presence or barrier that forced them to swerve. Yet when police arrived to investigate, there was nothing at all on the road. No debris, no accident, no indication of danger. Officers were baffled. The first report came from a trucker who swore he had seen a large, dark shape blocking his path. He described braking hard to avoid it, only for it to vanish before he could reach the location. The patrol officer who responded found the road completely clear. A few nights later, a similar report came in, this time from a young woman driving home after her shift. She claimed that a wall-like shadow stretched across the lanes in front of her car, glowing faintly in the headlights. Again, when police arrived, there was nothing to be found. The pattern was growing, and officers began documenting each report carefully, trying to find common points. As more drivers came forward, the sense of unease deepened. People began to describe the same eerie feeling of being watched or guided off the road by something unseen. Officers conducted thorough searches, checking for fallen signs, stray vehicles, or even pranksters. But every investigation turned up empty. Cameras mounted along the highway recorded nothing unusual, and yet the phenomenon continued. The reports were consistent enough to suggest that the experiences were real to those involved, yet inexplicable in the physical sense. It wasn't until one detective decided to examine the highway at night under different lighting conditions that the truth began to emerge. Using a flashlight and a slow, methodical walk along the asphalt, he noticed something that had been missed in previous inspections. Small reflective stickers had been arranged in an elaborate pattern along the lanes. Under the moonlight and certain angles of headlights, the stickers created the optical illusion of a solid wall or barrier stretching across the road. The patterns were intricate, carefully designed to manipulate depth perception and play tricks on the eyes of passing drivers. What had seemed supernatural or sinister was revealed as the work of an artist with a taste for dramatic visual effects. The reflective road markings were harmless in intention, but extremely effective in creating panic among drivers. For the police, the revelation was both a relief and a source of frustration. The invisible roadblock had caused real fear and confusion. nearly resulting in accidents. Yet there was no criminal intent strong enough to warrant serious charges. Officers spent hours carefully removing the stickers to ensure the safety of travelers. The case became a local legend, a story repeated in bars, homes, and online forums, capturing imaginations and highlighting how perception could be manipulated with simple ingenuity. Even after the truth was uncovered, Highway 47 remained a place of caution, as drivers often recalled the unsettling feeling of confronting an obstacle that had never truly existed. The incident became a lasting reminder that sometimes the most unsettling threats are not what is present, but what the mind perceives in the dark. In the industrial district of Ravenwood, an old warehouse had long been abandoned, its windows boarded and walls covered in layers of peeling paint. The building had a reputation among locals for being eerie, though no one could explain why. That changed when police were called to investigate a series of small thefts in the surrounding neighborhood. Reports described missing tools, jewelry, and other items, but the thefts had an unusual twist. No fingerprints, no forced entry, and no one had seen the culprit. Officers traced the pattern of the thefts back to the warehouse, believing it might serve as a hideout. When they arrived, the scene inside was unlike anything they had encountered before. The warehouse was filled with hundreds of puppets arranged in lifelike positions, some seated at workbenches, others standing as if frozen mid-conversation. Each puppet seemed to be captured in a moment of action, and the overall arrangement created the unsettling impression that the space was occupied by people, not toys. As officers stepped cautiously among the displays, it became apparent that the puppets were not ordinary. Many were rigged with strings and levers, their movements activated by hidden mechanisms. A slight tug here or a push there caused some to jerk or rotate, creating the illusion of life. The discovery became more intriguing as officers explored further. One corner of the warehouse contained stolen items, neatly arranged on tables and shelves. A small stack of jewelry, a set of tools, and several personal items were displayed as if part of an elaborate exhibition. The most perplexing aspect was that some of the puppets appeared to interact with the stolen property. One puppet clutched a watch, another pointed toward a table stacked with tools, and yet another seemed to guide the eye toward a hidden alcove in the warehouse. It became clear that the puppeteer had designed the space with intention, creating a theatrical stage where each theft was incorporated into a visual narrative. Investigators moved carefully, realizing that the puppeteer had likely studied human behavior and police procedures to set up traps that delayed discovery. Some of the mechanisms caused small objects to fall or shift unexpectedly when approached, adding to the confusion and making it difficult to navigate the space safely. The level of planning and precision was staggering. Officers noted the creativity and skill involved, recognizing that the perpetrator had transformed crime into a performance, where each theft became part of a larger, orchestrated display. The breakthrough came when authorities discovered a diary tucked beneath one of the puppet platforms. It contained detailed instructions for each theft, diagrams for the puppet arrangements, and notes about timing, positioning, and audience perception. The diary revealed that the puppeteer saw the warehouse as a stage and the stolen items as props in a living story. Months of thefts had been executed according to this vision, each crime carefully planned to remain undetected while contributing to the overall scene. Eventually, the puppeteer made a misstep, leaving behind evidence that allowed police to apprehend him. The capture concluded a case that had challenged officers' understanding of criminal behavior. The warehouse, with its frozen figures and intricate displays, remained a haunting reminder of the extraordinary lengths someone could go to turn crime into an art form. Even after the puppeteer was removed, the memory of the lifelike puppets and the ingenuity of the setup lingered, leaving a sense of unease and fascination for those who had walked among them.